Hello to all of you. We're gonna start this presentation. So thank you very much for joining this presentation on the first level of the Tomatis training. So we're gonna start the presentation now. And before starting, I would just like to show you how you can interact. You can raise your virtual hand to ask an audio question at the end, or you can type your comments and questions here throughout the presentation. Throughout the presentation, I won't be able to answer and to read your question and answer them at the same time, but at the end of the presentation, I will go over all the questions or that have been written, or I go and open the microphones of the person who have a question. But during the presentation, I will keep the microphones closed, so there's not too much background sound. Thank you. So I'm going to present myself. I'm Valérie Gas. I'm a clinical psychologist and a Tomatis consultant, and I work in a center in Lorient, Rennes, and Paris, Tomatis Center. And I am also a Tomatis trainer. Now, I would like to give you some of the objectives of this presentation. So it's to give answer to all the questions you may have on the Tomatis method, on the training. So on what is the Tomatis method and how it works, on how to use it as a complementary tool in your professional activity, and what benefits that the professional and the client can obtain from the Tomatis method. I'm going to say some few words on the official training and answer any other questions you may have. I am recording the presentation, so it will be sent to you after we finish the presentation today if you want to go over any information. So we will start looking at the group, at the company. So the company Tomatis Development was created in 2000 by Christian Tomatis, who was the son of Alfred Tomatis. And today, Thierry Gaujarenc is the actual president of the group. So Tomatis Development is the exclusive holder of the know-how and the Tomatis trademarks. He's also the holder of several trademarks like So Listen, Talks Up, and patents filed by Alfred Tomatis. It is the only company which is authorized to fabricate and distribute the products and services that exist under the trademarks presented earlier, and they're also habilitated to train professionals to the method developed by Alfred Tomatis and to all the techniques used in the equipments to apply the Tomatis method. So there are more or less 1,630 professionals in the world. So we have around 900 practitioners level 1, 220 practitioners level 2, more or less 290 Tomatis consultants, and 220 schools that use the Tomatis method in the school. So who do we train to the Tomatis method? We can train teachers, different fields of application. That can be for school, but it can be also music teachers, singers, foreign language integration. We work with psychologists or different therapeutic fields. Occupational, we train occupational therapists, doctors, it can be ENT or other types of doctors, speech therapists, voice professionals or professional musicians that want to work with the Tomatis method, and also in the field of music therapists that are trained to work with the Tomatis method. So that this is some examples of the people that we train to use the Tomatis method. So Tomatis in the world, to give you an idea, we have more or less 108 people working with the method in the United States, more or less 81 in Mexico, 282 in Poland, 80 in France, 121 in Spain, 95 persons in South Africa. So this is some examples of the people around the world. In 2004, we did 35 trainings in 18 countries for the level 1. In level 2, we did 11 trainings in 9 countries. And for level 3, we did 5 trainings in 5 countries. Last year, we did not do any level 4 trainings. We will do one this year. So you have the website, tomatis.com. Maybe you've been on it. It's in 11 languages. We receive around 360,000 visits per year, and we receive more or less 3,000 training requests per year. Here you have also a website which is called Tomatis Association.org, tomatisassociation.org, which is a website where you can find most of the documents written by Tomatis on his research on the method, or documents on the method written by other people, research also on the Tomatis method. So that's a interesting website where we try to put all the information concerning the Tomatis method. So this is the Tomatis team with the president, the director, which is Grégoire Tomatis, which is the grandson of Alfred Tomatis. Then you have the different persons working in Tomatis. So now we're going to go into the Tomatis method. So who was Tomatis? Alfred Tomatis. He was born in 1920 and died in 2001. He was an ENT doctor and surgeon, and he was a phoniatrician, voice specialist. He was also the son of Humbert Tomatis, who was an opera singer. So this was very important in the life of Tomatis and in the way he developed his method. Since he worked a lot with professional singers, and he realized that when the singers had problems on their voice, there was a very important link with the ear. He also worked at the Ministry of Labor on occupational deafness and had a busy private practice as a consultant for singers. So he was the first one to discover the relationship between hearing and phonation, and by extension between listening and communication. He also taught at the School of Anthropology and the School of Psychology in Paris. He wrote more or less 14 books. Only 4 of them are translated into English, and many articles. So on the website tomatisassociation.org, you can find most of the articles. There's also a book that you can download for free, which was a book on case studies that was written by different Tomatis consultants on different cases. So it's a very easy book to read and interesting because it shows different cases that were worked on with the Tomatis method. And you can download it free on the tomatisassociation.org website. So what is the Tomatis method and how it acts? It is a listening training that takes place through a neurosensory auditory stimulation, which enables an auditory fitness in a mechanical way which gives back their functionality to the muscles of the hammer and the stirrup of the middle ear, and also restore the frequencies that were perceived in a distorted manner. So we're going to do this using the electronic ear that was designed specifically for this purpose by Dr. Tomatis. So it's a gymnastic, we can say that like that, of the muscles of the middle ear. So we have to talk a little bit about the notion of listening, since we do what Tomatis used to call of a pedagogy of listening, a training of listening. So here's a definition of listening that we use. So listening is the ability to use one's ear in an attentive manner for the purpose of learning and communicating, and in a way which is not emotionally disturbing. So, the notion of listening, we have hearing, which is a physiological capacity, which is also passive. We don't do any efforts to be able to hear. And then to this capacity, you add the listening capacity, where is a choice, it's an action. It's not passive. You have to be motivated to integrate information and to listen. And that's what Tomatis realized as a doctor and a surgeon, that there was hearing, but there was something more than hearing, which is listening. And that's why he tried to combine these two systems when he treats, he works with the Tomatis method. So listening is the capacity to choose, to select the information we want to integrate. It's also the capacity to aim, to focalize to different sounds, different information, to be able also to be open to receive the information. Because if I'm not ready to listen, I can hear, but I won't listen. And that's why you can have a very bad hearing and be a good listener. And you can have also a very good hearing and be a very bad listener, in function of how you are ready to integrate the information. It's also a way to feel intuitively, to integrate the information, to put yourself into a listening posture. For Tomatis, that's something very important. You need to be interested in the information you're going to be letting in, and to be able also to concentrate, to be able to treat this information. So listening is something that's very difficult. It asks for a lot of attention, concentration, a lot of energy, efforts to be able to integrate. Hearing, being passive phenomenon, it's just it works or it doesn't work in function if there are physiological difficulties on the hearing level. But to listen needs some big motivation. So listening should not be assimilated with hearing, and listening is to hearing what aiming is to sight. Okay, so as we were saying, listening is an action. So the ear is the entry door to 80% of the information which is processed by the brain. So the ear has different functions, as we were saying earlier. Hearing, which is a physiological function, which is going to treat the information that is coming from the outside and treat it into the inner ear, which then sends the nervous information to the brain to analyze, codify this information. Then we have listening, which is active function, where I have to be ready to integrate the information and willing to integrate. The ear has also another function, which is one which is less known, which is one of very important for Tomatis, of cortical arousal. The ear gives energy to the brain. Okay, it maintains awake, if we can say, on a positive manner, to be able to concentrate and aim at the information that is important for us. And it has also another function which is very important, the balance and motor coordination. So if the ear doesn't function correctly at a neurosensory level, all its functions will be affected. So any of these functions can be affected and will have an incidence on how we integrate the information. So we have the capacity to hear correctly. Then there's the capacity to listen to what we hear without any distortions. If I'm very stressed, I'm going to create distortions in the information that is going to be going in, or I'm not going to let some information go in. We have all experience that when we are under much stress, we're not very available to what's going around. But we hear correctly, but the information is not going in. So the level of our action in the Tomatis method is at this level, in the capacity to listen without any distortions. So for that, we have to act on the emotional level. We have to act on the listening posture, on a good quality of sound analysis, this which can be there can be an influence of the emotional level at this on this analysis. So then there's the capacity to understand what we have listened on a cognitive and perceptive level, and then the incidence on the cognitive learnings, the perception of reality, of language and communication. That's why it's a very wide field of application that we work on with the Tomatis method. So why, if our hearing is good, we can lose our listening capacities at a neurosensory level? So the hearing can be also bad because of a pathology, auditory deafness, traumas, tumors, ear infections, and so on. And also it can be there can be what we call listening distortions because of psychological defense, which is can be due to stress or tensions or psychological traumas, different elements that are going to influence and set the emotional level. And that's going to create distortions in the way we integrate the information that is coming from the outside. So what happens in the middle ear? So in this part of the ear where we have the three ossicles, we have two muscles, which is the muscle of the hammer and the muscle of the stirrup. So we are going to act on these two muscles. So when we are under tension, in the same manner that we tense other muscles of the body, we also tense the smallest muscles of the human body, the muscle that act on the hammer and the stirrup bones of the middle ear. When these muscles don't function correctly, they create listening distortions that will appear on the listening test. That's what when we work with a listening test, this is an ideal curve for Tomatis. Here is a curve with listening distortion. So it doesn't mean the person is not hearing, but what they are perceiving is distorted. Okay, so I can integrate things in a manner that maybe are not really what's happening in reality, or I can have emotional reactions to certain sounds because they remind me of something not very nice that happened to me in the past. We all had experiences with hearing some people voice and saying, "Oh, I don't like this voice," and the person didn't do anything negative to us, but it probably on the emotional level reminds of the voice of somebody that we don't like. So we cannot act directly in a manual manner on the muscles of the ear. We're not even, they're so small and the ossicles are so small that we are not even conscious of these muscles, but we can act on them so they recuperate their functionality in a mechanical manner with the electronic ear. That's why Tomatis used to say that the work he did was gymnastics of the middle ear. So we're going to pull on these two muscles using the electronic ear and using music. That's why we use different pieces of music, which is the Mozart music. We also use some Gregorian chants and vowels in function of the way we use them on the electronic ear. We will be aiming at different areas of the listening test to work on different areas, and also we will work in a more or less intensive manner on the muscles of the ear in function of the programs that we use and the musics that we use. So we will have effects upon brain stimulation and arousal, which is very important for everything that's attention, concentration, for the memory. We will also have an action on the fine and gross motor skills, since the ear is in relation, very close relation through the vestibular system with all the body and the muscles of the body, on the tonus, also muscular tonus of the body. It's in relation with the cerebellum, for which treats everything that has to do with coordination and automatizations of movements, and the vestibular system and the cerebellum are related very closely, sending information to each other constantly. We have an action on the attention and on the working memory, on emotions and stress regulation, since the ear has a direct connection to the limbic system, which is the emotional system, and that's why sounds can remind us of positive or negative emotions. That's one of the big functions of music. Then it acts on socialization, because in function of the way I integrate the information, if I don't integrate correctly the information, I'm not going to understand what's happening around me. We also have an action on language, speech, reading, writing, and all that has to do with musical abilities. That can be singing, but also playing an instrument, because it's also dependent of the ear. For Tomatis, the relationship between the ear and the voice is very important. And it's been there from his earliest research, and it's a fundamental relationship. So the voice reproduces only what the ear listens to. It's called the first Tomatis effect law. So in function of what goes through the ear, I will be able to reproduce it with my voice or not. That's something, and that's why we can act on the speech, on the way the person reproduces information. That's why also we act we work with people for language integration, because we can work on the different linguistic bands that each language has. Here we have some examples of different linguistic bands. For example, British English has the ear of the British English has a dominance in the high frequencies. You can see the French is more in the middle area. American English is middle and a little bit higher. Russian has a very big, wide linguistic band. That's one of the reasons why they are able to speak generally many languages, because this linguistic band makes that the ear trains constantly at the different levels of the sound harmonics the ear can use. Spanish is in the lower frequencies, Italians is a little higher with a short linguistic band, and German quite a wide linguistic band also. So in function, when we use the method for foreign language integration, we're gonna aim and make the ear of our client work in the linguistic bands the language use in a general manner. Okay, it doesn't mean that English doesn't go to 125. It works on all the frequencies, but on some harmonics the ear is more specialized, which is these ones for English, as we were saying. So how we can integrate the method in a professional activity? So it is very clear for us that the Tomatis method is a complementary method. Okay, it doesn't replace the professional therapeutic intervention. So and that's why we train professionals to the Tomatis method that already have a professional field of application, and they're gonna adapt the Tomatis method into their professional field. So what we see is that it's a booster for the results that we can obtain as professionals. It enables through its neurofunctional action to boost the results of therapeutic intervention, or sometimes to unblock situations in the achievement of the objectives established by the professionals. But that's something that we see almost every time that we work with our clients, children or adults, it's that generally it's going to speed up the work they already started with other professionals. For example, I work a lot with children, and I see that working with the Tomatis method, we see improvements in speech therapy where the child is able to reproduce or integrate sounds more easily and to reproduce them also correctly. Then we use different protocols which are specific in function of the intervention and the field of intervention we want to work on. So that's what we work on the training, is to know how to apply the different programs in function the results we are expecting, and which programs to use to be able to integrate and get the results. So some of the advantages we have seen with the clients and the patients. So at the physical level, we see that there's going to be a vestibular maturity and balance improvements. So we can see difference in posture control, in the rhythm, that can be rhythm for music or dance, but also rhythm for reading, rhythm for speech. There's also changes in laterality, in coordination, movement control, gross motricity, fine motricity, everything that has to do with space and time references, positioning into space and time, and also organization, because the vestibular system with other parts of the brain is in charge of all these elements. The vestibular system sends information to all the muscles of the body and controls also everything that has to do with posture and the position of the head in function of the gravity and so on. Then on the intrapersonal level, we're going to see emotional wellness, improvement in frustration tolerance, self-consciousness, autoregulation, results also very positive in the self-esteem. On the motivation also, that's interesting because the cortical arousal giving energy to the brain makes that people are going to be more motivated. Also on empathy, lowering of stress and anxiety. It works very, very well on everything that has to do with stress and anxiety. Security, persons feel more secure on decision making. On the interpersonal level, on the social abilities, on listening and communication with others, we can see improvements. And on the cognitive and executive functions, we're going to see improvement in the listening quality, which is going to facilitate the attention, the rapidity in the integration of the information, an adequate integration of the information, sound analysis and discrimination improvements. Memorization is going to be better verbal comprehension, the more receptivity to the message, self-listening, which is also of better quality, the listening to others that improves also, a fast and adapted response to the environment. If I can integrate rapidly the information, generally I can give a faster response, motivation and interest for communication, and improvement in the sound and vocal control with the auditory feedback. And we can see also behavior improvements, because if I integrate correctly the information, I feel more into security and my behavior is also going to change. So this is some of the advantages we have seen with the use of the Tomatis method. So I'm going to go through some applications in functions of different professional speech. So this is general examples on the use of the method in function of the fields of application. So for example, everything that has to do with pedagogy, psychopedagogy, we can work on the productivity, the optimization in the educational field, learning and language difficulties. We work also on attention difficulties with or without hyperactivity, emotional problems, communication problems, motor problems, and foreign language learning. So that's some of the applications in the fields of learning. Then we have the field of speech therapy, where we can work on the voice, everything that has to do with aphonia, dysphonia, distortions in oral language, or comprehensive, like aphasia, distortion in the language, like dysarthria, dyslalia, reading and writing difficulties. For example, we work a lot with dyslexia, dysgraphia, speech fluidity, on stuttering, for example. Tomatis works very well with stutterers. Then we have the audiologist ENT field, where we're going to work on sound discrimination, auditory memory, audio linguistic recovery after an ear sickness. Sometimes we work with people who have been gone through surgery of the ear to re-educate the muscles of the ear, work on coordination and balance difficulties, tinnitus, laterality, and the optimization in the acceptation of the hearing aids. So we've seen this very much. People who buy hearing aids and have difficulties to adapt to them, and doing the Tomatis method helps them to be able to use them in a more positive manner and be less bothered by the amplification they create. We work also in the field of psychology, health, and wellness. So we're going to work a lot on the dynamization and cortical arousal, which is going to give an increase in physical, mental, and emotional energy. So more motivation in everyday activities, more vitality and dynamism, better attention, concentration, and memory. Also, we see improvement in sleep quality, a big decrease in stress and anxiety, relaxing effect on the hyperexcitation of the amygdala and the limbic system, since we have an open doorway to these cerebral structures. Also, more autoconsciousness, so we're going to think, feel, and act in the same direction. We can also, there are other fields of application, like, for example, improvement of the voice and musicality, everything like we were saying earlier for foreign language integration. There's different studies that you can look at concerning these different fields on the website I talked to you about at the beginning. For example, for foreign language integration, there was a study that was made through an European program in 6 universities, where they use different methods for language integration. And Tomatis and the electronic ear arrive first with the results, where we had 50% of less time of to learn a foreign language. So that's a big difference. Better reproduction of sounds also. So there are different research, for example, on foreign language integration. And then there's another field, which is birth preparation, where we are gonna work with a pregnant woman on the communication with the baby, and also on the stress, anxiety that can be created, or just to give energy also during the pregnancy and stimulate the relation also with the baby. So how do we work when we do the Tomatis training? What's the organization? So generally we do an initial assessment, which lasts in functions our professionals feel. Generally, when I do an initial assessment, I take 2 hours to have to do my assessment. After this assessment, and if I decide that the Tomatis method can be applied, we're gonna work through sessions of 26 hours. So we do what we call a first session of 26 hours, and normally we work 2 hours every day and 2 hours per day. Okay, so the program of 26 hours is done in 13 days. Of course, there are some exceptions. Some we will see after these slides. Some small children don't work 2 hours per day. Sometimes we work 1 hour in the morning, 1 hour at night. For example, with autistic children, we're not going to work 2 hours a day, but we may start working 5 minutes, and we're going to go progressively up to 1 hour. Generally, that's no problem. And a lot of autistic children stay 2 hours of listening per day, but they have to get used to it, and generally they accept very well the program. Then after this first session of 26 hours, we're going to do a break, which lasts more or less 4 to 6 weeks. This break is as important as the listening because it's during this break that the integration takes place and that we start seeing modification, even if sometimes we can see some changes during the program, but we expect changes during these 4 to 6 weeks breaks. Then we do a new interview before we start the new program. We can also do, which is not right in here, an interview at the end of the program, but there's always an interview at the beginning of the program to do the second 26 hours intensive. Same way, 2 hours per day during 13 days. Again, we do a new break, and which is a break that can go up to 12 weeks, between 8 to 12 weeks break, before we do the third intensive. In a general manner, in function of the difficulties, we generally work for 3 sessions, okay? But there can be more. When we work with autistic children, we don't expect to get results in 3 sessions. It's going to take much more sessions of listening. So then we continue doing intensive of 13 days, 26 hours of listening, but we do breaks of 12 to 24 weeks breaks in function of the difficulties, in function of the results we want to obtain. So for small children, as I was saying before, we're not going to do 2 hours of listening per day. So we start working with babies who are 2 years old because we need to have the fontanelles closed before we can work with children, since we're going to work through bone conduction and the vibrator on our headphones is placed on the top part of the head. The fontanelles have to be closed. And with 2-year-old children, we're going to work half an hour of listening per day, and we're just going to do a 10-hour program and a break, like we saw earlier, also a 1-month break before we do another program. 3 years old, we can start working 1 hour of listening per day, but we're going to do a 15-hour program. With 4-year-olds, we work 1 hour and a half per day on a 21-hour program, and it's starting 5 years old that we start working 2 hours per day on 26-hour programs. So small children, we do smaller programs and shorter times of listening. Since we are working on the muscle of the ear, you can understand that we're not going to work on a 2-year-old for 2 hours on their muscle of the ear. So let's talk a little bit about the professional training. So there are 4 independent levels of training. Level 1, practitioner level 1, the goal is to integrate the basis of the method, so the use of the ELMA programs. So there's going to be an introduction to the method. There's some courses on acoustic, on anatomy and physiology of the ear, the parameters of the Tomatis method, the different ELMA programs, and the use of the Tox-Up, which is the device we use to do the programs and so that the persons can do their sessions at home or in a center. So the Tox-Up is the latest electronic ear. So it's the newest electronic ear that we use. Then we have level 2. Here the goal is to integrate the evaluation tool, which is the Tomatis listening test system, and learn also the listening test interpretation. Okay, a listening test is not a hearing test. We're not measuring hearing, but listening. So we don't use the same calibration in our listening test machine than in a hearing test machine. So we have to learn how to do a listening test and how to interpret it. We work a lot on case studies, on the audio vocal loop, and also at level 2 we start integrating what we call the active stage, where people can during the program repeat words, do reading, work out loud to start working on the auditory feedback. On level 1, the programs are what we call passive programs because we always start with passive programs in the Tomatis method. Then we have level 3. The goal is the first level of programming to establish individual programming. On level 1 and 2, we work on level 1 with 10 programs that are pre-established. So we learn how to use and which programs have to be used in functions of the difficulties. When we go to level 2, we have 24 different programs available. And starting on level 3, we're going to learn to do our own programs, individual programs, in function of the listening test. So the basis of the programming we're going to learn and the implementation on the new electronic ear, the TalksUp, and a lot of case studies to implement the programmation. And then level 4 is a second level of programming and test interpretation. So we're going to use all the functions of the TalksUps and the programming settings. We can also start working and we introduce the mother's voice, the work of Tomatis with the mother's voice, and also a lot of case studies. So this is two cases, a lot of case studies and practice. When people get to level 3 or 4 or even level 2, they already have an experience with level 1. They already have worked with clients. So that is very interesting because it's much easier at that point when you have your own clients to be able to see you already have seen modifications on them when you start going on the other levels. But each level is completely independent. You don't have to go to level 2, 3, or 4. It's in function of how you want to apply the Tomatis method and your professional field. So that's why in function of the trainings, as you've seen, there's less people trained in level 4 than in level 1. So once we've done the training, we continue the training with online mentoring every 2 months, more or less. We do a presentation on different subjects that were seen during the level 1 training. Then you have also access to the Google group, okay, which is a very active group where all the level 1 practitioner, level 2 also Tomatis consultants share their experience and exchange on the different cases they can encounter and give advice in function of the difficulties that people can have. There's also a continuous training which takes place once a year. Generally, it lasts 1 or 2 days in function. And there can be personalized or individual trainings also, which are possible. So what do we use? So we use the TalksUp. So this is the electronic ear. This is the TalksUp. So it comes with wired headphones. We also work with wireless headphones. When we work with group programs, we can use wireless headphones and we can connect up to 40 wireless headphones to one TalksUp. So the 40 persons connected will have the same program. We cannot do individual programs in group programs. So that's what we use in general when we work in schools or also in groups for language integration, for example. So to be a practitioner level 1, so you have to have the training, you have to have a TalksUp and not anymore a TOXUP ELMA, and you have to sign a contract to become the Tomatis practitioner level 1. So there's a licensing contract of the trademark and use of the Tomatis and TOXUP brands as they are offered to you and non-exclusively. Use of the TOXUP programs implemented on the player. There's, as we were saying, online mentoring and training, the Google group for experience exchanges and question. You also will have access to the TED, Tomatis database questionnaires. So we are finishing it. It's not yet online, but it's going to be online, where people clients who want to do the program can go on and answer questionnaires that will give us the possibility to evaluate before and after a program. There's also a big anamnesis. So for people who are not used to do interviews, can have as many questions as possible to have as much information concerning their clients. So all this is accessed online, and the client answers directly the questionnaires online, and the practitioner receives the results directly. You are also listed on the Tomatis website. So that's interesting because you also have the possibility on this website, if you've gone on the website and look for somebody or look in a country and so on, you see that you have access to the information of a person who has been trained in Tomatis, and the person has the possibility to add up information on their professional background, or if they apply other techniques, if they use other techniques, all that you can put it on the Tomatis website in the area where you have your information. You also have on the Tomatis website a member part where you can access once you have been trained, where you can download documents, get some information, for example, pictures that you can use to do your documents and so on. And you also have access to the technical assistant if you have any problem with the TOXUPs. So there are different people. There's the technicians who takes charge of all the technical difficulties. So I don't know. I am finished. I don't know if you have any questions. So you can ask the questions by raising your hand on the, or by writing the questions on the little part you have access to, is as you wish. What I can do, I'm going to try to see if I can open the microphones. Okay, I'm going to open your microphones. So like that, if you have questions, you can ask them directly. So okay, yes, the microphones are open. So if you want to write or ask directly your questions, you can go ahead. So as I said in the beginning, you will receive the presentation. It's been recorded, so you will be able to get the presentation. So I don't know if there's any questions by written or orally. If some people want to ask questions. I don't see it. Let me check.
واحنا قاعدين ساكتين بس ان احنا جايش.
Okay. Yes, we can hear you now. So I don't know if some people have questions.
المفروض ادوس على ايه يا شيخ؟ مش عارفه مش دايسه ولا ايه؟ مش عارفه. ميوت يور سيلف. Yeah. I'd like to ask about.
Yeah, if you have a question, go ahead. There's no problem.
Okay. I'd like to ask about if every patient should receive all the levels of training, all the 26 hours, then break that 26 hours, then or every stage we should assess the patient and decide if he is going to continue or not?
Okay, in a general manner, the three intensive, as we call them, is what
Yeah,
we do in a general. For most difficulties, we
yeah,
need at least three levels of three intensive. Okay, it's very
okay,
rare that one is not enough. That's clearly not enough. Remember that we work on we on stimulation of the brain, and we have to create new pathways. We have to modify the way the muscles of the ear function, and it takes time. And it's not just doing 26 hours enough in a general manner to get results. So in a general manner, we work on three intensive, and sometimes many more in function of the difficulties. If I take, for example, the example of work with autistic children, it's going to be probably 2 3 years work in function of the results we want to take. But like for any therapy, you cannot imagine to get results with an autistic children in 3 26 hours intensive, which is in reality not much. Okay.
okay. Can I ask a more question?
Yes, yes, of course.
Okay. After finishing, say, level one or stage one, do we assess the patient to go up for the next stage, or we postpone assessment till we finish all the stages?
I didn't hear the last part of your question. I'm sorry.
Uh, After we finish the stage one, the first 26 hours,
Yes.
then we are going to assess the patient to go up for the next step, or we postpone assessment till we finish the four steps or three steps. I didn't remember.
Generally, what we do is we always, I if I tell you how I work personally, I see my client when they do the first assessment. Then I do
Yeah,
26 hours. Then I see my clients at the end of the 26 hours to see how everything went on. Then we
yeah.
do a break of 1 month. And when they come back, I see them again. We do interview and so on. We start the second intensive, but we can assess the clients after the month break. You need to assess them once they've done the break, okay? Because the break is absolutely necessary when you work on brain stimulation. You need the break for the brain to be able to integrate the changes. So generally, I personally assess my clients when I finish, if I do a global assessment, when I'm finished with the three intensive, but we see our clients before and at the end of each intensive. I don't know if it's very clear what I said.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, I see that there's a written question. You mentioned the course is independent, no need to follow in sequence. Well, you need to, if you decide to do all the courses, you need to follow them in sequence. When you start, you always start by level one. You cannot start by level two. You start by level one, but you have no obligation to go to level two. But if you decide to go to level two, you cannot go to level three if you didn't do level two. Because even if they're independent, they're interconnected in the information that people learn as they go up from one level to the other. So there's no um, need to go from level one to level two, but if you decide to do it, yes, you have to follow the order of the training. Okay. I don't know if you have other questions.
I'd like to ask one more question.
Yes, yes,
Can I?
yes. Yes, of course.
Uh, Previously, I got training on the Kirby method. Okay,
On the what?
of, on Kirby method of auditory integration training.
Hmm.
Okay. Uh, but now I found that Tomatis, the core of the concept of Tomatis is similar, but the way you are dealing with the patient is different. So, do you know the differences between them, or is there differences in results between them, or you
I,
cannot?
I didn't understand. Could you write me in the question area the name of the method you got trained in? Because I didn't,
Kirby method, Kirby method,
I don't know.
Kirby.
I've never heard of it, so I cannot tell you
Okay,
about it.
okay, sorry.
Sorry.
Okay, sorry. Sorry, thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
No, 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 sorry, thank you.
There's a question about the assessment interview. Do we get guidance or questioning based on Tomatis system? That's why we train professionals, because you're supposed to use your professional background to be able to assess in function of your objectives, because your objectives are also in function of your professional background. But as I was saying, we're finishing on the questionnaires that are going to be online, that will be able to help you to assess your clients uh, in function of the changes that can be expected with the program. But you also have to take into account that everybody is different, and you don't get the same changes in function of each client. But yes, there are questionnaires that have been done to be able to assess the clients. Okay, I don't know if there are other questions. Well, if there's no other questions, I will stop the presentation. I thank you very much for your participation, and you will all get a mail with the recording of this presentation. So again, thank you very much for your participation. Bye bye.